This thing says I'm Charles Gaines. So it's nice to meet all of you. I think that what I'm supposed to do here is to give a progress report. And as far as that's concerned, it really demonstrates something about Creative Times that's just amazing. And that is that they don't give up. I was asked to do a commission 5 years ago that was going to be cited in St. Louis. And we put the project together. I built the piece, and I'm going to show you the installation of the pieces that I designed for that site. But as I said, it was 5 years ago, and in fact, it was 4 years ago that I gave the first version of this speech right now about this is the piece we wanted to do, but it didn't get done. And so I'm going to give the same speech again and start. This is the piece I still want to do, and it still hasn't been done. But the thing about it is that Creative Times, there's certain concepts that they don't understand, like I give up, it can't be done, too expensive, things like that. But and it's a wonderful part of them. That's a wonderful thing about them. But what I designed was a piece, or actually two works. One was called Moving Chains, and the other was going to be an opera that was whose manuscript was going to come from the Dred Scott trials, the court documents where it was decided that Dred Scott couldn't get his freedom because he was not a human being. I mean, it was an interesting situation where, for the first time, by law, it was established that black people weren't human. And so all of the court documents around those three trials, the second trial, Scott got his freedom. That is, that he was taken to a free territory by his masters, and while he was in free territory, he sued with his wife Harriet he sued for his freedom. And the first trial said no, you couldn't. It was retried in the second trial, and the second trial said yes, you are able to sue for your freedom. But then it went to the Supreme Court, and Judge Taney wrote a long judgment that it's described why black people can't be given the right to sue because they're essentially not human beings. So I started writing a libretto that was then going to be converted to an opera, or developed into an opera, based upon a strategy that I have for musical notation and composition, and I won't get into details about that strategy. So you can see in this slide, you see the Saarinen Arch, and then in the background you see the courthouse where the Dred Scott trials took place. And originally that was going to be the site of the opera. We were going to occupy one of the courtrooms and put some seats in there and do it. But so that was one project. The second project is a project called Moving Chains. And I wanted to do a sculpture that sort of reflected on that moment, at least the moment where St. Louis at the time was a frontier city. That is, that was on the edges of what we call the civilized United States. And the arch is sort of a symbol of looking out into the frontier or beyond St. Louis. And St. Louis sits along the Mississippi. So there's a site of commerce. And in fact, the area was built upon the commerce that traveled up and down the river. And part of the we'll call items that were shipped were slaves. So this is a place where slaves were transported in various locations, up and down, all the way down from New Orleans all the way up to and past Mississippi during the time that was a legal thing to do. And so I wanted to make a piece that essentially merged these two narratives. One is the Dred Scott, and the other is the history of St. Louis and the history of commerce and slaving. So what I did was that I designed a kind of a box that was, it started out being 200 feet long. And you can see in this slide where it was supposed to be sited was at the base of the arch. And when you walked toward it, down the stairs, all you saw was 10 200-foot-long chains that were moving. The chains, 9 of them were silver or metal looking, and the 10th was patinaed kind of gold. The chains moved at the same rate as the current of the Mississippi. But the chain in the middle, the colored chain, was moved at the rate of the ships that traveled and did commerce along the Mississippi. So therefore, the river metaphor, there was a river of chains, so to speak, that you thought was there. But once you got closer, you realized there was the bottom part of the space underneath the chains, which was an enclosure that I pretty much called a boat. And so you can get in it and stand underneath the chains. Now, one of the links of the chain, at the time, talking about Creative Times saying don't give up, we were going to build this out of actual chains, and each link in the chain is just like 5 pounds, 5 to 7 pounds, which meant if each chain link was 200 feet long, each chain link would weigh the same as a 747, really. And so we had 10 of them, and we designed it to go around a pulley system, and when you got underneath, you could see the chains moving above you, and because of the weight, because of the friction, it would sound like a 747. So we took this to some engineers, and they said, sure, we can build this. It's just going to cost $30 million. So I said, well, okay, now this project's dead. But no, Meredith Johnson and Gene Clooney said, no, don't worry about it. They always told me, don't worry about it. They told me that 5 years ago, and so they're still, in fact, the project is picked up again. This is what's so impressive about Creative Times, that Justine Ludwig, the president director, also said, don't worry about it. It's going to get built. And so it turned out that we did. We found a way of dropping the price from $30 million to like $1 million, which is really crazy. I don't know how it happened. But essentially, the original engineers who built ships and worked for the Navy they thought it was the stupidest. They thought the piece was interesting, but it was a stupid idea to build. So they're just saying, you can't build this. That's why it's $30 million. But then ultimately, we actually found some engineers who can build it. But then the project collapsed in St. Louis. This is the top view. This is a side view. The project collapsed in St. Louis. They ran out of, there were some political problems. And then the project was dead. But it was revived again downtown Manhattan. This is still the St. Louis project. Oh, well, I don't know. Anyway, I'm sorry you won't see the New York project. But it was revived again in New York. And we're going to build it down by the river, where the Statue of Liberty is, trying to dredge up the same narrative. But then that got killed. But then it came up again. Justine Ludwig said, we're not giving up on this project. We're going to push forward on it. And so that's where we are now. We're pushing forward with the moving chain. We're pushing forward with the opera. And, I gave up like 20 times at Creative Times. They just don't know how to give up.